For today's episode, we have Noel Wurst joining us. He's the director of storytelling at SmartBear. He's responsible for communication strategies and public relations initiatives, and he has a personal interest in helping build inclusive and diverse workplace cultures. Join us in this conversation today. We have a lot of fun talking about communication, specifically in software testing. Hello and welcome to Quality Sense Podcast. So nice to see you again. We've been doing this for a long time, right?
It has. It's been a long time since we've been trying to get this show recorded, and then just since we've seen each other in general. I think it's only been at one conference, and that was pre-COVID years ago. But that's how these relationships continue sometimes. You stick with whatever limitations you've got, and you push through them and forge ahead.
And here we are.
Yep.
Before delving into the conversation on our topic, my first question is, what's your background? It's on communication, right?
It is. So I was an English major in school, and with a focus on creative writing, and so not really knowing what to do with that post school besides teach it, which I tried to do for a year and was so bad at it. I found an opportunity to just start writing really basic web copy. I mean, frequently asked questions, product descriptions, just the most basic, level. And then that moved to writing people's emails, to writing presentations and executive speeches and keynotes and blogs and white papers and webinars. And it just, got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there became a need to figure out how to actually share that stuff with the world. There was a time where you could write, if you just had a blog, I mean, that was a big differentiator. It was a big thing to have a blog. And so you could just have a blog and win from that. And then it became, well, everyone had a blog. So how do you make yours get seen? How do you make people want to read it, subscribe to it, act on the calls to action you put in those blogs, things like that? And so that got me more into communication as to, we're creating all of this content. It's all great, but how do we make sure that the right folks read it and know what to do with it and are excited to share it and everything else? So internal and external communications of all of this stuff we're creating became kind of a key for me. That was one that we're still solving today. We're still trying to figure out how to do that well. So it was an accidental thing I fell into, and I'm thankful for it because it's still very relevant.
And you've been working in the software testing field for several years already, right?
Yeah, about 10. So the first tech job I got, I managed to convince the person interviewing me that I could write about this stuff, even though I'd never had a tech job before. And she was like, okay, we'll give you a chance, like, go for it. And I started to look at things, and it was like configuration management and ALM, application lifecycle management, and DevOps and cloud computing and all this stuff. And it was like, oh no, what have I done? I didn't understand any of it. And software testing, not only did it feel easier to understand, but the people who were in that world, these speakers at conferences and authors and evangelists, were so friendly and brought me on as like, you care about this stuff and want to write about it? Come on board, like ride my coattails, follow me around, like ask me questions, let me help you understand this stuff better, because we need people out there telling these stories. And so I've always been very thankful to the testing community for helping me get that foot in the door that I had promised my boss that I would be able to do. I would not have been able to do it without their help. So yeah, testing was my first foray into tech, and I'm still just in love with it today.
That's an amazing story. I know we are sidetracked here, but I have had this conversation of how welcoming is the testing community in general, and I'm glad to hear this story as well. Amazing. And so, you, as I understand, you are in this beautiful intersection between software testing and communication, where communication is a key, essential part of this idea, even if we refer to the software testing definition, which is providing information about the quality of a product we are testing, right? So providing information, transferring information, this is like a form of communication. So how we communicate is an essential part of our role. So my first question for you, because when you try to read or study about effective ways of communicating, the most typical piece of advice is know your audience, right? Know your audience. So
It
how
is.
that can be applied to our role? How what can we do in order to follow that advice?
There's a lot. I mean, I would say just use that natural curiosity, that inquisitiveness of snooping around to find out as much as about your audience as you can. Where I have fallen into the trap before is I'll write a story, or I'll create a story, a presentation, a talk, whatever it is. I'll read it and be so in love with it, and I can either give that talk and the entire audience is kind of like, glad you think that's so interesting. I'm not real sure why you told us, kind of thing. Or they might love it. They might think it's amazing. And I'm like, they loved it. It's proof that this is a great story. And then I go tell that same story, but it's a completely different crowd. And it's that first reaction of like, I mean, neat, I guess. And so it's really important to understand who it is you're communicating to. We could talk for hours on the importance of why, but it's really around like they've got their own lives, like they've got their own expectations, they've got their own demands, their own goals, and your story, if you are asking for their time, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, a half day conference, whatever it is, you need to know going into it that the material you're going to share with them is going to benefit them in some way, it or in some way or in all ways. I mean, it needs to come across very clear to them, like, wow, I can see why they're telling me this. Like, I am so glad I now have this information. um, People's time is really limited these days. Everyone's is. And so you can find out about that audience to just learn more about who they are, and again, what they're tasked with, what are their current challenges, what possible solutions or ideas for things they should try do you have that you can share with them, and how can you come across as someone who's legitimately or just who legitimately cares about their lives. It should come across to them very clearly that you are someone who is interested in helping, and has information that you feel is valuable for them to hear, and that's why you've called them there today. They should be very thankful that you shared that story with them. They should also be very happy that they made that choice to kind of come hear you out.
So we typically are speaking to developers, different decision makers, product owners, I don't know, managers in different flavors. So is there something particular that you can generalize about that type of audience that we should take into account when communicating testing results or something like that?
I mean, it's probably a little similar to what I was just saying, just again, and knowing their role. I mean, like, so I got my start in the testing industry, and I would go to these testing conferences. That's primarily how I got to know these folks and hear these stories, and come back and write my own stories about them. And one thing that I noticed was that it was, understandably, predominantly, if not entirely, testing crowd. And so, you were sitting there amidst other testers, and in some ways, it was testers telling other testers about how great testing is. And it was like, that's great. I mean, like that should happen. I mean, like you should, as a tester, like remember how important your work is and feel valued and understand that what you're doing contributes to the business and that sort of thing. But you would then need to be able to take that information and apply it to a different audience, because a tester telling that story about how important testing is to a group of testers is different than how they would tell it to a group of executives or a group of developers, like you just said. And so when I would go to these testing conferences and see only other testers, I would wonder, is this story getting to developers, developers in particular? And then I would go to development conferences and I would look around and I would see not a single tester in the crowd. And it would be the latest new thing in development and the tool, the framework, the new technology that you got to have and got to understand. And obviously, it's developers that should have that information. But can they then take that information and convey to whoever it is that authorizes the purchase of that new technology, or who can understand the reason they're doing that now and changing things up? That's where it gets a little tricky, and that conferences and blogs and newsletters and all of these mediums that we share information, they're pretty siloed. I mean, it's marketing stories for marketers, it's testing stories for testers, it's development stories for developers. And I don't see those stories kind of crossing the ponds over to these other teams too often. And some of them might not need to, but I think it's really important when you can find a reason to do so, to do that, so that other people can understand why you do what you do, how it contributes to the business, why you need this extra budget, or whatever the case may be.
You're making me think about something I experienced when giving talks about performance testing, for example, in developers conferences. If you go to a conference for developers, there are not many slides. Most of the presentation is a demo with the IDE, and they are coding and showing results and iterating on that. So my learning from that was that, okay, let's try to do the same. If this is how they are used to receive content, try to adapt our testing content, which typically is more like slides with different results and conclusions and things like that. What about doing a live demo of scripting performance tests and running and getting the results and iterating like they are used to receiving that type of material content?
Right. Exactly. I mean, I one time was invited to present. I had done a bunch of research on our like social media presences and where we were getting good engagement with the testing and development communities, where we weren't, where we were having success here and there across, different social channels. And I presented it to my boss, who was the CMO, and she said, "This is great." At our weekly C-suite executive meetings, we always bring in an external speaker, not just one of us, but someone else from the company to come in and share something with us. I think this would be great for them. And I was like, wow, it's the first time I've ever been invited to do that. And so there's a person who organizes that meeting, who then also makes sure that external speaker, that their talk is going to be received well. They really set you up for success. They don't just let you come in and throw something at that crowd and hope it sticks. That they don't want it to be that way, which is great. And so she said, "Send me your deck of what you were going to present." And I sent it to her, and I'll always remember this. It was 47 slides. Oh, wow. For me, my slide decks are usually pretty big, but I go through them quickly and they help tell a story and paint a picture. And she wrote back and was like, "Please tell me you weren't planning on sharing 47 slides in this meeting." And I was like, no, I wasn't. I clearly wasn't. And so she was like, I forget, I do forget the number, if it was 4 or 6, but she was like, "I think you should cut it down to 6 or 4 or whatever it was." And it was like, 6? How? Like that kind of thing. And I did it. Like I was able to do it. And I went in and it went really, really well. And even by like, I think it was 6, because even by like the 3rd slide, there were some folks in the room that were already like, "We get it. We get it. Like, just tell us what you're like, what's the ask? We get it." And I was like, like I had an ask. I didn't expect to already be giving it at that point. And I gave it and they were like, "We love it. You got it. Run with it." And it was like, that was the outcome. That was the desired outcome that I wanted. But I had completely, by not understanding that meeting, that crowd, their time, the way they process information, had I not had that success person there to make sure that speech went well, I would have probably been on like slide 7 and someone would have been like, how many more of these do you have? And I'd have been like, "Oh, just 40 more." And it was like, I might not have gotten that desired outcome. So again, like you just said, knowing how they like to receive information, how quickly it takes them to process it, what it is that they want to see, you have the ability to show up and show them that, even if it's a different thing or type of presentation or talk you've ever given.
I'd like to take a moment to thank the people at Abstracta for sponsoring and helping me to create this podcast. Abstracta is a company fully dedicated to software testing and software quality that can help you and help your company to push the quality of your products and processes to the next level. We are talking a lot about sharing stories. So is there something from storytelling techniques that we can apply in our reporting or in our job showing results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really kind of comes back again to that getting comfortable telling it to different audiences, because I'm on a brand and communications team within a marketing team, And any talk I give about brand and communications to a brand and communications audience is going to be well received. And they're going to like it and thank me for giving it and tell me great job and that kind of stuff. I mean, I have other marketers on my team who sit just a couple of rows over who that story would not resonate with at all. Like they are in a completely different world. But by understanding their challenges and their goals and their needs, I can go in and tell that story in a way that makes sense to them because it is beneficial for them to hear that and be able to kind of offer support. So for me, I would say it's knowing your audience, and it's also again just being really really curious for your source material. And that, I mean, I could write 100 blogs this year about brand and communications and be quote just fine and hit a certain level of success by sticking to that topic with the information I already have or can collect from sources I've already used. But I ask all the time to sit in on other meetings and to attend other all hands or stand ups and that kind of stuff. And what I think is really funny is it's happened so many times where when I ask the person who arranges that meeting or sends out the invite, they'll say sometimes like, I don't really know that you're going to really get a lot out of this. It might be a waste of your time. And I'm always like, that's okay. Like I'm carving out the time to find out if that's the case, because it's not every time. It's not every meeting you sit in on. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just now attended one of these meetings. That probably happens, I would say, less often than the other, which is to sometimes go, okay, well, this didn't have something, but now you know. It's almost like exploratory testing, where like there's this gray area where like there could be something over there. If there is, it's going to be awesome to have been the one to take the initiative to go poke around and find out. There may be nothing, but at least now you know, and it doesn't continue to be this area of like, I don't really know what's over there, or I don't really know what that team does. Go find out. Like you never know like what tiny little bit you're going to hear that they would have never thought to tell you, because that was from their world, like that was from their subject matter, kind of area. And that happens all the time too, where like when I do that and I attend one of those meetings and afterwards I write someone on Slack and say, I am so glad I attended that. I had no idea y'all were doing X, Y, and Z. There's a million stories we can tell about that to this audience and this audience. And because I'm in also like the PR world, the response sometimes is like, oh, sorry, yeah, we've been working on that a while. I didn't think to tell you. I mean, I knew we weren't going to do a press release for it. And I'm like, that's not all I do. That's not all I do is press releases. And so again, kind of tying it all up, it's like poke around, like sit in on another meeting, go see what this team is working on, sit in on one of their stand-ups, just eavesdrop, listen, join Slack channels, because you just, as a storyteller, you pick up on so much that's outside of your world by poking your nose into it. They don't always lead to great insights that you're going to include, but when they do, you never would have learned about that thing or been able to include it in your stories had you not been the one to go snooping around there. And that it's rare for me. I would never think about a brand stand up and go, you know what, I better go see if someone from legal wants to sit in on this today. They probably don't. Like they probably would wonder why I'm asking. But if someone from legal was like, I've always been really interested in what y'all do, would it be okay if I sat in on one of y'all's meetings? Like, of course. And so I'm never told no when I ask to do that. Sometimes it is like, I don't really know if you're going to get much out of it. But that's okay. Like, just say, that's all right. Like, if that happens, that's totally fine. And so that's my advice for collecting material is there's so much material available in your own individual world or silo that you'll never run out of stuff to talk about, but you'll be able to talk about so much more by getting out of that silo or bubble that you're in.
And there are many cases where we have to test without enough documentation. So this is an excellent way of getting some, even a way to shift testing to the left, because you are getting yourself involved in in other type of conversation at other stage maybe. And in some cases, I guess it's not because they don't want to share information with you, but maybe they are assuming that you already know that, or that this is not important for you, or that you cannot get something valuable from the conversation, and maybe you can get something important from there.
Right.
That's very interesting.
I love asking other people, other teams, departments, whatever it may be called, what their like OKRs, if that's what they're using, are, or their KPIs or their goals, or like whatever goals or metrics or whatever their initiatives are that they need to accomplish. It's funny. It's like, those aren't private. And, it's not like they don't want anybody to see those. They'll wonder again why you want to know, which is fine. They probably should. But it's so funny. Like I'll see the product team's OKRs here at SmartBear, and there'll be a million. and I'm scrolling through, and some of them I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Who knows? Like, oof, that's gonna be a hard one. Like, oh, cool, yeah, that's neat. Oh, neat. And I'll see one that I'll be like, what's that? Like, that sounds like something I do stuff that relates to that. And then I go find the person who has that specific OKR, find out where they're at now, what information are they missing, and I'll end up saying like, hey, by the way, like we just did a survey of our customers and learned that, again, X, Y, and Z, like I have that material right here. That sounds like you knowing that would help you achieve your thing. And they're just like, I didn't know y'all did that. It's like, just by seeing other people's work, it's like, it's so great to find out what you can contribute to, because some of those goals are really hard. They should be. But then when you have someone else go, I had no idea you were trying to accomplish that. I've got stuff that can absolutely help you do that. Oh my gosh, it's like friend for life when you offer that up to somebody, and when someone offers it to you, it feels just as amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you mentioned this, is like participating in this type of conversations as testers or as QAs, like question askers. It's very important to ask good questions. What's your advice on asking good questions?
I again, knowing the audience always kind of comes back to them, just like finding out from them like what it is that they are interested in and interested in talking about versus not, and what are they not interested in? Like what do they not like or have an interest in? Because you don't really need to dive too deep down those areas. Finding out what their goals are, like we just talked about, with what is it you're currently challenged by. There's the what keeps you up at night, question, but what are your current OKRs and goals, things like that. And just kind of learning more about them as to how comfortable they are with sharing that information, making sure they know why you're asking. Sometimes if you come in snooping around asking questions, someone's immediately like, what's all this about? And then they go to tell someone else like, hey, by the way, Brand came in asking all sorts of questions about what we're doing these days. It's like, they let them know why early, like let them know ahead of time, in advance or at the start of your conversation, so it doesn't feel like some interrogation. It's like, this is that way it kind of opens them up to feeling more comfortable to sharing that, letting them know what you're going to do with that information. And then I would say to make it a regular occurrence. And that can be whatever cadence the two of you are available to doing. And that doesn't mean weekly, it doesn't mean quarterly, it doesn't mean annually, it's whatever level. But to come in one time and spend some time telling them how you are so interested in their work and that you are dying to know these things and you've just been wondering forever, and then that turns into one conversation and you're never heard from again, kind of cheapens that level of interest you painted that picture of having. So make it be something where you kind of come back, just be present, be around, let them know what you were able to do with that information, like to just use it, and then it benefit you because you used it. Let them know, almost like sending a thank you note. I mean, it can just be on Slack where you're like, hey, by the way, because you told me about that survey that we had, I was able to use that information to influence this new feature being added to the product. I would not have been able to do that without you. Share that information. It can be with their boss. It can just be in their Slack channel. We have a Slack channel here where we go in and just kind of throw some random gratitude in there of like, hey, by the way, just want to give a shout out to Jane Smith this week. She really stepped up and did blah, blah, blah. And it was a huge win for our team. Love collaborating outside of our own departments here. The emojis just like, I'm just, everyone loves it. And it's turned into this, not a competition, but just this really popular habit of going in and being like, by the way, like this dude, like this woman, like to just throw a random thanks. It's great. So it just gets people a lot more comfortable with someone else coming around snooping, asking to join their meetings and asking for a bunch of information you've never shared outside of your team before. And that sets up for easier conversations down the road because they already trust you when you come in.
What I'm hearing is that you don't only pay attention to the information you want to retrieve, but also the relationships you are building. Right? That's sure. a very important part of the communication as well.
I always imagine this scary situation, and I always imagine the scary situation of a group of people in a room from different departments who are deciding who to keep and who to let go. I don't even know if those things take place. I have no idea, but I just imagine this scenario, and I imagine like headshots popping up on like a PowerPoint deck of like, what about this guy kind of thing. I want again, I don't even know that happens, but I imagine it, and it feels very real. I want when my face to come up multiple departments to be, that guy's the best. Like, such an interest in what we're doing, so willing to jump in, so curious about so and so, tells our team how great they are all the time, uses what we're doing, or like promotes what we are doing when we never expected, that kind of stuff. Like, I just, that role, that reputation is so easy to achieve. It really just sometimes comes down to just being like, be a nice, thankful, appreciative, publicly person kind of thing. And so I feel like you can be a hero within your own team, but if your team makes up 5% of that company and 95% of that company has no idea what your little 5% team does, it's going to be hard to defend why they should keep you or your team. So it's like, I really, really believe in the power of whatever your role is. I don't care if it's HR, legal, development, tester, whatever. Like, as much of the company understanding the awesomeness of you and what you and your team are working on is only going to benefit you every single day.
Yeah, it's about showing the value you bring to the team, to the company.
Right.
Right. Is there something else?
It's very easy to get up and say, like, look what our team did, and you should sometimes, for sure, and the rest of the company still may go, is that important? Like, I don't, like, did you share that win in a way that the rest of the company or another team or two other teams, whatever, could see it and go, wow, that is really cool. Because it's really easy for me to be like, look at what an awesome story we told, and my fellow storytellers will be like, that is an awesome storyteller. Where like someone in, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another team I haven't mentioned yet. Trying not to single out anybody, but for another team could be kind of like, why are we telling that story? Like, they should know. Like, when you share something with people outside of your world, it should be shared in a way that people outside of your world can also see it and go, wow, what a great thing that they did. Not just your own folks. That's where I see a lot of the testing, like, world and development world, where they don't often mix at conferences, which is okay, as long as they're able to then take those new learnings and go back and not only share it with their team, which will be the first group they probably will, but also, like, let's make sure the rest of the company knows we're doing this too. And then doing that by understanding how they need to kind of receive that information. It won't be the same way that you shared it with your own team.
Makes sense. And I will add one more step to that process, because I understand that it's like talking to your own team about the value you provide to the company, and also knowing how to show that value to the rest of the company in other positions, right? But the first
Right.
step to effectively do that is understanding your own value. And
Yeah.
this is an introspection, which is a very interesting exercise to do. It's like understanding how I provide value to the team, understanding it, and then communicating
That's
that
true.
value.
That's really big. And I had one thing a story I was going to tell earlier that I forgot. There was someone here at SmartBear. She's no longer here, but she asked me one time. She said something like, "Oh no, I was trying to encourage her to share more on Slack about, hey, that was a really cool thing you did," or that it could be a single engagement on Twitter, it could be a new blog that was published, a virtual event, whatever it was, and I'd be like, make sure and tell, others, like, post it here in the Slack channel. And she'd be like, I see you do that like all the time, but like it gets so little engagement. Like, it seems like no one else cares. And I'd be like, so like, keep doing it. Like, you're not going to blow them away with one thing. You keep doing it. You just keep showing, like, we're still doing this. This is still really important. It's like, and you explain why it's important. You explain why it means a lot to you, like you just said, and just, grow that following, grow that belief in what you also believe in. They're from a different world, like a developer kind of coming in and saying, like, we were just able to move on to this, cloud architecture. The first time you share that with, like, how cool is that? I'll be like, I guess it sounds cool, like, kind of thing. But it's like, just keep sharing, keep letting others know. Don't take a single, like, just like you wouldn't tweet one time and get no likes and be like, that's it, I'm off Twitter, I'm obviously not that popular. It's like, it's a cadence of, like, regularly sharing, of people seeing, like, wow, this person believes in it this much, to keep sharing it, to keep inviting us to attend this lunch and learn or brown bag or join this virtual event. They keep letting us know, like, just be present, let them see what it is you're so passionate about, and that you continue to want them to see that importance of. And you'll win some folks over. It may take a little while, but it's better than just assuming this is from my world. this world isn't going to get it, or it's too technical for them, or it's too fluffy for them, whatever it is, just keep sharing and keep letting them see how consistently passionate you are about this thing.
I think this is an amazing wrap up of this conversation. Noel,
Great.
thank you so much for all these valuable pieces of advice. And I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
See you in the next episode of Quality Sense Podcast.